Hello, welcome to the Rangers News YouTube channel. James Black here once again. I'm joined by Jordan Carlisle.
Alright, how you getting on?
Not too bad yourself.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think the last time we were on, we're quite there's quite a lot of chat of optimism and things that were going well at the start of the season, and I think the weekend sort of tainted that a little bit.
It certainly has, yeah. The weekend, the dismal 0-0 draw with Livingston at the Tony Macaroni Arena. Now, there's been quite a lot of talking points come out of that game, but one I want to focus on is the midfield and Ryan Jack and Glen Kamara in particular. There's plenty of fans of both Jack and Kamara in the fan base, and I think there's a lot of arguments that both have shown a very vital role in Gerrard's side. But is there an argument there that we need to have two holding midfielders in games like a draw with Livingston? Do we really need to have that, or can there be kind of more attacking impetus from midfield?
Yeah, I think I've certainly seen people, that sort of system where the two sitting midfielders work really well in Europe against teams that are going to come to Ibrox and maybe not dominate possession, but certainly have a lot of the ball and have a lot of threat in the final third. Maybe the thought process is you're going to Livingston and you're going to have a tough physical battle. They're going to come at you and lump balls in the box, and you might need a bit of a buffer in front of the back four. But realistically, Rangers were always going to dominate the ball there, and as we've seen over the last couple of years under Gerrard, the whole point when you go there, I think Rangers lost the first time they went there under Gerrard, but then have been a lot better since. But where teams struggle, Celtic struggled there last year. It's just an inability to break down a team who sit in pretty tight, are physical, and it's difficult to move the ball quickly on that pitch. So I think you need to give yourself the best chance, and the best chance of breaking them down is not with two players who, at the minute, are. I think Kamara is always very limited in that way. He's very happy to receive the ball. Facing his own defence, very happy to pop it off and move it. That's just the way he plays. I think Ryan Jack is just playing that way at the minute. So the two of them are doing the exact same thing, and it just becomes pedestrian. And it's so. I think maybe there has been a slight overreaction afterwards because obviously the issue is that this was Rangers' chance to sort of capitalise on Celtic's lack of playing and all that, but I think within perspective, it's one draw. But the thing is that it just looks so similar to previous feelings, and it's just so slow. And a team with the players in it that Rangers have, and the money that they spent, and guys that were bringing off the bench to not really create anything of note, it was really poor.
I mean, that's the big one for me going into that game. And going into most games, I don't have any real problem with starting with those two. I think kind of to build that solid base to kind of take control of the game, it absolutely works. But at the Tony Macaroni Arena on Sunday, you quickly saw that it wasn't working. Like, as the game went on, I mean, particularly as you got in towards like the last half hour of the game, there was no desire to change that, and that really confused me. I mean, Gerrard took off Morelos and brought on Cedric Itten, which, when you're chasing a goal, I don't get it. Why do you keep two defensive midfielders when, for the 60 minutes or so before it, your back four haven't really been tested? It's not as if Livingston were having huge swathes of possession. They weren't particularly testing the McLaughlin. They weren't putting Philip Helander and Connor Goldson under huge amounts of pressure. But for some reason it was let's not lose the point rather than let's go balls to the wall and go for the three. And to me that just, I don't know if there's a slight reminder of that to Warburton's plan B is doing plan A better. And I slightly got that feel on Sunday. And I mean, I'm not saying for any second that kind of Gerrard and Warburton's teams on the same par or anything else, but the manager's got to have that thing about him where he is willing to take those gambles and he is willing to make those changes. And one of the ones that took a lot of flack for doing that was Pedro Caixinha, and as much as Pedro was utterly fucking mental, there was the Livingston, the Motherwell game where he made 3 subs at half time. There was games where he would make drastic tactical changes to try and get something from the game. And for me, that's how it has to be when it's for Rangers and for Celtic when you're drawn 0-0 away to anybody in the Premiership. These aren't the games where you should be sitting back and going, well, we've got a point, let's just settle for that. And I think keeping Jack and Kamara, particularly as games go on and you see that it's not really changing, keeping those two on the side, it's almost self-defeating.
Yeah, I think you get to a certain point in the game where it's very clear that Livingston are happy with a point. Mm-hmm. And obviously going into it as well, you don't necessarily know this in the build-up, but Dykes doesn't play, and that should be a huge boost for Rangers, because he did, not that the guy's an absolute world beater, but he gave Hollander a hard time last year and has done well against the Old Firm. So he's out of it. Their main attacking threat, focal point, is out of it. And then you still persist the entire. It's not as if he's sitting on the bench ready to come on. You still persist with the same thing. But for me, I think Gerrard took a lot of criticism last year for not making substitutions, not doing anything until late on the game. I think he made the subs. He brought Roof and Itten and Barker and all that on, but he just brought them on to do the exact same job that someone else was doing beforehand. And there's no sort of thought to. My sort of issue is that Michael Beale is obviously talked up as a really good tactician and a very good technical coach, but it's maybe hard to beat that block. In general, it's hard to come up with stuff. It's hard to beat teams that aren't prepared to come out at you. But at the same time, that's what Rangers have to do. They can't expect Livingston or teams like that to come out the blocks and just be ready to get picked off. If you're going to be a top side, if you're going to win leagues, you're going to have to work hard for it. So they need to find ways to be able to break teams down, and it's not helping the fact that you're basically forgoing another attacking player by having those two in there. I think Ryan Jack last year, I've seen quite a lot of talk on social media of people raging saying Ryan Jack's never been good enough, he's never this player, he's never that player. I thought for a stretch last year he was brilliant, and we all waxed lyrical about him. He looked like, when he played for Scotland, he looked like an international midfielder with good passing range, who's willing to get stuck in the centre circle and protect his back four, but then also willing to get forward. He scored a few goals for Rangers last year, a couple from range, but he just seems completely unwilling to sort of take any risks, to make a run from where he is, pass and move. There's none of that. It's just distribute, give it to the winger, sit back, and then once the fullbacks push up, then there, I think the job is, I don't know how, strongly they've been told these things, but, Jack and Kamara just seem to be just little pawns. He'll pass the ball and then sit back when the two fullbacks bomb on, so Rangers aren't called out at the back. And I think a team who are so vastly superior in terms of technical ability should be able to sacrifice one of those guys, even if, it's hard to work out how you start differently. Maybe have someone like an Arfield in there who can do a bit more in terms of going forward from the start. But I think I'm probably with you. I'm not totally against the concept of doing it like that, but the players need to go about their performance differently. And also there needs to be a willingness that not after 70 minutes, but after 55, when it's 0-0 and it's not working, then you change it and you throw some of the guys that you've paid money for on, not for the other guys that you've paid money for in attacking areas, but for one of the defensive midfielders.
Yeah, one of the big things that jumped out to me as well was when the likes, particularly Ryan Jack, I've noticed this with in recent games, is when he's getting the ball, when it could just be a nice quick one-touch pass, move it on, get the ball moving upfield and do it at speed. Take a touch, turn inside, turn back the way you've came, turn the way you've came again, look behind you and play the 5-yard simple pass to a guy who's further back down the other end of the field. And it's just he's playing it far, far too safe for me. And as you said, I don't know if that's coming from the instructions for the management, if they're not wanting Jack and Kamara to take gambles, to make these third-man runs and try and get beyond the more attacking players. but it's chopping Rangers off at the knees at times when they really need to have something more going forward. And also, I mean, there's a lot to be said for the performances of the front four at Livingston on Sunday. I know people are going about Ryan Kent having a particularly good game. I thought he was absolutely woeful until the last 15-20 minutes. I thought he was invisible. I think he bet himself more than he got beaten by the Livingston defender. Hadji was largely anonymous. A couple of nice little flicks, but that's it. Scott Arfield was, to all intents and purposes, an empty jersey. And I mean, I love Scott Arfield. I think Scott Arfield's a massively underrated player, but he was rotten at the weekend. And you're even seeing it in Morelos, where it's bringing Morelos continually deeper and deeper and deeper. So it's affecting how everybody else round about them's playing. And I think it's a big part of why we kind of saw those struggles to break the Livingston side, who, with the greatest respect to them, they got pumped 4-1 off Hibs on the same pitch 8 days earlier or so. So I mean, alright, yeah, they're going to have played more defensively against Rangers, that's understandable. But we're not talking about a team here who've got some sort of stellar defensive record.
Yeah.
They've changed their back four 3 times in 4 games. There's a debutant keeper who last season was playing for Eastleigh. I mean, it's just, Rangers aren't helping themselves at times with these sort of things. And the more it goes on, in Gerrard's first season, yeah, okay, fair enough, you kind of got that he was maybe a bit more pragmatic than he needed to be. In his second season, yeah, he had his fingers burned at Livingston. That apprehension's a bit understandable. In season 3, when he spent more money this summer alone than that entire Livingston squad's cost to be built up, there's no reason to be going there and effectively looking to come away with a point.
Yeah, I think when you're saying there as well about the forward players, certainly it was a lack of service. I think sometimes people confuse, though, sort of on the Kent situation, he was getting a lot of praise, but really, I think he's done well. The first couple of games of the season, he's already got 2 goals in 4 games, and you can't, knock that from a winger. That's sort of what Rangers are looking for him, if not a bit more than is realistic across the course of the season. But I think he works really hard, and I think you could see that he was trying very hard, and that's what people sort of got on board with. But the problem is that you paid £7 million for him, so he needs to be able to do more than that. And I think Morelos was anonymous again. He had that one half chance, a header at the back post, maybe better than a half chance. Absolutely skied it again, looks out of sorts. But he's now got, I know we've talked about this before, and it's slightly going off the point, and teams scout him and then decide how much they're willing to pay for him, all that over a long period of time. But the guy's now got 3 goals in 16 games, and that's a really poor return since the winter break last year. So I think it was a very positive start to the season. There was certainly some warning signs that haven't fully clicked. But I think when you have guys like Hollander and Goldson stepping out of defence and sort of doing the midfielder's job, that's a concern, and certainly needs some more dynamism in there. So plenty of time left in the window. But I think the main thing is a change in attitude for me, that Jack's certainly capable of playing in a different way, but he just isn't at the minute. So change attitude and maybe a new body and sort of improvement in that way.
It is something that Gerrard's spoken about, wanting to bring in someone in the engine room, to quote him there. But do you see him bringing somebody in that replaces Jack or Kamara?
Well, that's the thing. They're 2 high-profile players, 2 internationals, with Stephen Davis sitting on the bench behind them, and then Scott Arfield is your squad player who, after the break last season, played quite a lot in midfield. So obviously they were in top, although it's been denied by the club, and there's various things floating about that way. I think they were in talks, or certainly aware of Zungu. So I think shows a willingness that they were keen to strengthen that area. They just didn't get their man, or that one's went quiet. So I think maybe I assume that it'll not be big money, but I think clearing out players at the minute, some fringe players, and there should be some funds, I think, to bring someone in.
Just before we wrap it up, Kilmarnock this weekend, do you think he changes it, or do you think we see Kamara and Jack doing largely the same as they've done?
I think it's hard to say. Also, I don't really think it is, because he's been doing it for so long. He's stuck with this thing. It may not be Kamara, and Jack Davis might come in for a game at home, and he knows they're going to dominate possession, and then in theory he could be a bit more progressive with his passing. But he's a guy as well who was dominating games last season and has dropped off the ball since then. He's been short of minutes, so I think sort of he needs to step up as a real quality player in there, and you would like to think it'll be a more positive performance.